Welcome to the deep dive. We're plunging into the fascinating world of how we power our lives, really, from the smallest home right up to the biggest industries.
It's a huge topic.
Absolutely. And today we're kind of mixing things up, looking at some surprising ancient wisdom alongside some really cutting-edge science.
A great combination.
We're going to try and unravel the huge potential of hydrogen as an energy carrier. We'll look into the, ingenious ways people are trying to store it.
Which is a big challenge.
A huge challenge. And we'll also face up to the real-world problems of getting renewable energy onto our modern grids.
Yeah, that integration piece is crucial.
So our mission today is to cut through all the noise, pull out the most important bits from our sources. We've got research from Argonne National Lab, a big energy review, and some breaking news out of Greece.
A good mix of perspectives.
Exactly. By the end, you should have a really clear shortcut to being, pretty well informed about where clean energy might be heading.
And understanding these details, it's not just for, engineers or specialists. It's genuinely critical for our energy future, for everyone. What often gets missed is how linked everything is. From the tiny molecules right up to, global economics.
Right.
So looking at it from these different angles like we are today, that really helps build a richer picture.
Okay, let's dive right in then. Hydrogen. It's often called the clean energy carrier, loads of potential. But what actually makes it so attractive compared to, say, fossil fuels?
Well, the really remarkable thing about hydrogen is its energy density per unit of mass.
So weight for weight, it packs a punch.
It's a huge punch, yeah.
A
small amount by weight carries a lot of energy. And it's not just some future fuel either. It's fundamental to a lot of big industries right now.
Like what?
Well, for starters, making ammonia. That's critical for fertilizers.
Okay.
It helps feed nearly half the world's population indirectly. It's also used in methanol production for polymers, sometimes fuel, and it's a key player in oil refineries. Used to process crude into gasoline, diesel, and importantly, to remove contaminants like sulfur.
Right. Cleaning up the fuel.
Exactly. And then there are other uses too. Metalworking, making flat glass, electronics cooling, preventing corrosion in power plant pipes. And there's a lot of interest in using it for making steel to help decarbonize that sector.
Wow. Okay. So it's already pretty vital across the board. But if it's such a potential game changer for clean energy, what's the big roadblock? Why aren't we all driving hydrogen cars already?
Yeah, what's fascinating there is it comes down to density again, but this time volumetric density.
Meaning how much space it takes up.
Precisely. In its normal gaseous state, hydrogen takes up a lot of space for the energy it holds. Think about trying to store enough air versus enough gasoline for a trip.
Right, you'd need a massive tank for the air.
Exactly. So for practical uses, especially mobile ones like cars or trucks, you need really efficient and critically safe ways to pack a useful amount of hydrogen into a reasonably sized tank.
Okay, so storing it isn't just like filling up with gas. Our sources mention quite a few different approaches. Can you walk us through the main mechanical ways they do this?
Sure. The main mechanical ways basically involve physically containing it under pressure or at low temperatures.
Okay.
So first you have compressed hydrogen, or CgH2. This is probably the most common right now for vehicles. It's stored under really high pressures.
How high?
Typically 350 bar or even 700 bar. That's, thousands of PSI. It requires strong, specialized carbon composite tanks. Honda and Nissan, for example, have used this.
Right. And the other mechanical way
is liquefied hydrogen, LH2. This means making it incredibly cold.
How cold are we talking?
Minus 253 degrees Celsius. Almost absolute zero. It's similar to storing liquefied natural gas, LNG.
Wow.
Japan has a big LH2 storage site in Kobe Port. The catch is liquefying it takes a significant amount of energy itself.
An efficiency loss.
Yeah, it can eat up over 12%, maybe 12.79%, or about 4.26 kilowatt hours per kilogram just to turn it into liquid. BMW used this approach in their Hydrogen 7 car way back.
Okay, compressed and liquid. But then there's this hybrid one you mentioned, cryocompressed, CCH2. That sounds interesting. Tell us about that, especially the Argonne study.
Ah, yes. Cryocompressed hydrogen, CCH2. This is where it gets really interesting, as you say. It's a hybrid, sort of combining elements of both compressed gas and low temperature.
Best of both worlds.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
The Argonne National Lab study back in 2011 was pretty pioneering. They developed what they called the Gen 3 CCH2 system.
Gen 3.
Yeah. Through some clever modifications like reducing insulation, better packaging, getting rid of certain valves, adding an in-tank heat exchanger, they managed something quite remarkable for the time.
Which was?
Their system demonstrated the highest gravimetric and volumetric capacity among all the built systems they analyzed in that study.
Highest density, basically.
Exactly. Highest energy stored per unit of weight and per unit of volume. It was a big step towards making hydrogen tanks more practical for vehicles back then.
That's some seriously clever engineering. Okay, so those are the mechanical ways. But hydrogen can also be stored chemically, right? Bound up in other materials.
You got it. Chemical storage is another huge area of research, and it offers the potential for even higher storage densities.
How does that work? Like a sponge?
Kind of, yeah. You bind the hydrogen chemically within a solid or liquid material, and then you trigger its release when you need it.
What sort of materials are we talking about?
Well, one big focus is nanomaterials. Using tiny structures, things measured in billionths of a meter.
Why nano?
Because the small size gives you short diffusion distances and huge surface areas relative to volume. This can dramatically improve how quickly hydrogen is absorbed and release the kinetics and potentially increase how much you can store.
Any examples?
Yeah. The review mentioned doping lithium borohydride, LiBH4, with nickel nanoparticles. This lowered the temperature needed to get the hydrogen out by about 20 degrees C and increased the amount released.
Interesting. What else?
Magnesium and its hydrides, so magnesium bonded with hydrogen, MgH2. Magnesium's great because it's abundant, pretty cheap, light, and theoretically holds a lot of hydrogen, 7.6% by weight.
But there's a catch.
The catch has always been getting the hydrogen back out. Traditional MgH2 needs really high temperatures, like over 300 degrees C.
Which isn't very practical.
Not really. But there's progress. Things like magnesium, titanium, vanadium nanocomposites can lower that release temperature below 200 degrees C. And other composites, like mixing LiBH4 with MgH2, have shown storage around 11 weight%. Ammonia borane is another one, releasing about 12 weight% hydrogen at more moderate temperatures.
So improving, but still challenges with kinetics and stability.
Exactly. Then you have things like metal organic frameworks, or MOFs. These are like crystalline sponges with incredibly tiny pores.
And they soak up hydrogen.
Yeah. Their ability to store hydrogen depends a lot on temperature and pressure. They generally work better at lower temperatures.
Okay. Any other exotic methods?
A couple more mentioned. Glass capillary arrays. Think tiny, tiny glass tubes bundled together. They showed promise for safe storage and release, even meeting some early DOE targets.
Huh.
And hollow glass microspheres, HGMs, basically tiny hollow glass balls. They're non-toxic, light, cheap, recyclable, and can hold hydrogen at high pressure without needing a big heavy tank.
Sounds good. What's the drawback?
The main one is needing high temperatures, around 300 degrees C again, to fill them and get the hydrogen out effectively. That adds operational cost. Research is looking at doping them with things like cobalt or using light to trigger release to lower those temperatures.
Fascinating range of approaches. So that's mobile storage. What about big stationary storage, like for the grid? Are the needs different?
Very different. For stationary storage, the weight and volume density aren't usually the primary concern. You have more space.
Yeah.
So established technologies like large-scale compressed gas or liquid hydrogen tanks are used.
But our sources mentioned something else too. Underground.
Ah, yes. Salt caverns. This is a really promising option for massive long-term underground storage.
Salt caverns, like actual caves made of salt.
Exactly. They can be created by solution mining in deep salt deposits. They have great characteristics, very low water content, low porosity and permeability, so hydrogen doesn't easily leak out, and they're chemically inert to hydrogen.
Stable.
Very stable. And their natural plasticity helps prevent fractures forming, which is key for safety. A single large cavern, maybe 800 meters tall, 50 meters wide, could potentially store hydrogen equivalent to 150 gigawatt hours of energy.
That's a huge amount of energy.
It is. But there are challenges. Compared to storing, say, natural gas, the energy density is lower. You need a lot of water to create the cavern. There'd be corrosion risks. And you need to keep a certain amount of cushion gas in there, maybe 20%, just to maintain pressure and prevent the cavern walls from creeping inward.
And cost.
Construction and operation costs are currently quite high. It's a major infrastructure investment.
Okay. Any other grid scale ideas? Power to gas?
Yes, power to gas is a really important concept here. It's basically about taking excess electricity, often from renewables when generation is high but demand is low, and converting it into a gas fuel.
Like hydrogen.
Hydrogen's one option. You use electrolysis to make hydrogen, and then you could potentially inject that directly into the existing natural gas grid up to certain limits. Or you can take that hydrogen and combine it with carbon dioxide, maybe captured CO2, to create synthetic methane. This uses the Sabatier reaction.
Methane. Like natural gas.
Exactly, CH4. So you're essentially creating renewable natural gas that can be stored in existing infrastructure or used directly. There are even biological ways to do this efficiently using special microorganisms, archaea, that only need low-grade heat.
That's clever, using existing pipes.
It's a big potential advantage. And there was that intriguing finding mentioned from the UK, suggesting that converting their whole heating system to run on hydrogen gas could actually be 150 pounds to 200 billion cheaper than rewiring all the homes for electric heat pumps.
Wow, that's a counterintuitive cost comparison.
It certainly presents a different pathway to decarbonizing heat, with its own set of challenges and benefits, of course.
Okay, that's truly fascinating, thinking about storing energy underground or turning electricity into gas. But, all these technical ideas sound great on paper. What do the numbers actually say about costs and real-world performance? Our sources had some specifics from Argonne and TIX.
Right. The economics and performance metrics are critical. Let's look at some of that data, keeping in mind it often assumes large-scale manufacturing, like 500,000 units a year, to get costs down.
Okay, so system cost.
For a tank system holding about 5.6 kilograms of usable hydrogen, the estimated factory cost back then, around $2,005, was about $2,200. That's roughly $12 per kilowatt hour stored.
What makes up that cost?
The biggest chunk was the carbon fiber layer for the tank, over $500. Then the liner, fittings, insulation, assembly, valves, regulator, it all adds up.
And for a bigger system, say 10 kilos.
For a 10.4 kilogram system, the cost went up to around $2,900, but that was actually more cost effective per unit of energy, about $8 per kilowatt hour. The carbon fiber cost was still dominant, nearly $1,000.
So fiber cost is key for compressed tanks.
Definitely for compressed hydrogen, CH2. For some of the other systems, like cryogenic sorption tanks, the cost of the storage material itself becomes more significant.
What about the overall cost of driving, like cents per mile?
The estimates varied depending on how the hydrogen was made. Using natural gas or the standard grid, it was maybe 17 cents per mile. If you used electrolysis powered by renewables, green hydrogen, it was a bit higher, maybe 21 cents per mile.
How does that compare to gasoline?
Back then, with gasoline at $3 a gallon untaxed, a conventional car was estimated around 10 cents per mile. So hydrogen was more expensive.
Okay. And efficiency. From the energy source to the tank.
Right, the well-to-tank efficiency. Options involving cryogenic hydrogen, like liquid or cryocompressed, tended to have efficiencies below 41%. Some chemical storage options with regeneration could reach 60%, while standard compressed hydrogen was also below 60%. Lots of energy lost along the way.
Yeah, greenhouse gas.
That's where green hydrogen shines. Using natural gas or the standard grid still produced significant emissions, maybe 0.31 to 0.37 kilograms of CO2 equivalent per mile, but renewable electrolysis.
Close to zero.
Compared to gasoline, it's about 0.35 kilograms per mile for a typical gasoline car back then. So green hydrogen offered a huge advantage there.
But the refueling cost, that was the sticking point.
A major one. The analysis showed that back in 2011, no storage option was meeting the cost target of $2,003 per kilogram of hydrogen untaxed.
Why so high?
For liquid hydrogen options, the energy cost of liquefaction was a big factor. For chemical storage, like sodium borohydride, the energy needed for regeneration, getting the hydrogen back out and refreshing the material, was the main driver of fuel cost.
And finally, the efficiency of the system on the car.
The DOE target was 90% efficiency. Liquid hydrogen systems lose some efficiency through venting, as some hydrogen inevitably boils off. Other systems, like those using alane or chemical hydrates, actually consume some of the stored hydrogen, maybe 10-30%, just to provide heat for the reaction that releases the rest of the hydrogen.
So they use fuel to make fuel available.
Essentially, yes, for those endothermic reactions.
Yeah.
Systems like ammonia borane were estimated to be more efficient, maybe only a 1% loss for pumps and cooling.
Okay, that's a lot to crunch, but it really paints a picture of the challenges, especially around cost and efficiency. Now, let's shift to where hydrogen actually comes from. Our sources talk about different colors of hydrogen. What's the story there? How is it made today versus how we want it to be made?
Right. The production method is absolutely key, especially for the climate impact. Today, almost all the world's hydrogen, something like 95% or more, is produced from fossil fuels.
Mostly natural gas.
Primarily natural gas, using a process called steam methane reforming, or SMR. This is often called gray hydrogen.
And the downside?
The significant CO2 emissions. You produce somewhere between 6.6 and 9.3 tons of CO2 for every single ton of hydrogen made this way. It's very carbon intensive.
Okay, so that's gray. What are the cleaner options?
Well, there are several pathways aiming for lower carbon emissions. First, there's blue hydrogen. This is basically gray hydrogen, but you add carbon capture and storage CCS to capture most of the CO2 emissions produced during the SMR process.
So lower carbon, but still from fossil fuels.
Correct. Then you have green hydrogen. This is seen by many as the ideal long-term solution. It's produced by splitting water H2O into hydrogen and oxygen using electrolysis.
And the green part?
The electricity for that electrolysis comes entirely from renewable sources, like wind or solar power. So zero carbon emissions in production.
The holy grail, then.
In many ways, yes. There's also turquoise hydrogen. This is derived from natural gas, like gray and blue, but uses a different process called methane pyrolysis.
How does that work?
It essentially splits the methane, CH4, into hydrogen gas and solid carbon, like carbon black. So no CO2 emissions. The carbon is captured in a solid, usable form.
Interesting. Different ways to make it cleaner. What about the electrolysis itself for green hydrogen? Are there different types?
Yes, there are several electrolysis technologies. High-temperature electrolysis, HTE, operates around 800 degrees Celsius.
Why so hot?
The advantage is that at high temperatures, some of the energy needed to split water can come from heat itself, rather than just electricity. So you could potentially use waste heat from industry, or heat from nuclear power, or concentrated solar plants, reducing the electrical demand.
Okay, what else?
PEM, electrolysis proton exchange membrane. This works at lower temperatures, below 100 C. It's simpler, compact, and good at handling variable power input, which makes it well suited for direct coupling with fluctuating renewables, like solar panels.
Sounds flexible.
It is. And then there are alkaline electrolysis cells, AEC. These are a more mature technology, often operating best at higher electrolyte concentrations and temperatures maybe near 200 C.
And how efficient is electrolysis overall?
Theoretically, a 100% efficient electrolyzer would use 39.4 kilowatt hours of energy per kilogram of hydrogen produced. In practice, current commercial systems typically use around 50 kWh/kg.
Plus more energy if you need to compress it.
Exactly. Maybe another 15 kWh/kg if you need to compress it for vehicle tanks. So efficiency is still a key area for improvement.
Are there any other, maybe less common ways to make hydrogen?
There are quite a few others being researched or used in niche applications. Things like plasma pyrolysis using plasma torches. There's radiolysis using nuclear radiation to split water. Thermolysis just using extremely high heat, but that's generally not commercially viable. Photocatalytic water splitting using sunlight directly, but performance is still low. And even biochemical routes using microbes for fermentation.
And wasn't there something about natural hydrogen found underground?
Ah, yes. That's a really surprising and potentially game-changing area.
Yeah.
Natural hydrogen, sometimes called white or gold hydrogen. It turns out hydrogen is actually generated naturally within the Earth's crust. And in some places it accumulates in underground reservoirs where it might be possible to extract it using wells, similar to natural gas.
Yeah.
It's a relatively new field of exploration, but very exciting.
Truly fascinating. Okay, one more production-related topic. Ammonia. You mentioned it earlier for fertilizer, but our sources also discuss it as a way to carry hydrogen. Can you connect that to the bigger picture?
Right. Ammonia NH3 is getting a lot of attention as a potential hydrogen carrier or energy vector itself.
Why ammonia?
Because it stores a lot of hydrogen, about 17.6% by weight, which is very high. It's much easier to liquefy than pure hydrogen, needing only mild pressure or moderate cooling, similar to propane.
So easier to transport and store.
Much easier. You can use existing, relatively inexpensive pressure vessels, and its volumetric hydrogen density, how much hydrogen you pack into a given volume, is actually about 45% higher than liquid hydrogen. Plus, when you decompose it, you get hydrogen and just nitrogen gas, which is harmless.
Sounds promising. So could we use ammonia directly in cars, maybe cracking it on board to get hydrogen for a fuel cell?
That's the idea that's been explored. However, the U.S. Department of Energy report we looked at highlighted some really significant challenges, specifically for onboard vehicle use.
Such as?
You need very high temperatures, over 500 degrees C, to efficiently crack the ammonia back into hydrogen and nitrogen. There are concerns about the durability and reliability of the catalyst needed for this reaction. Startup times can be slow.
And purity.
Critically, PEM fuel cells, the type common in hydrogen cars, are extremely sensitive to ammonia. Even tiny trace amounts, like more than 0.1 parts per million, can poison the fuel cell. So you need incredibly effective purification systems on board.
Seems complex and heavy for a car.
Exactly. The report concluded the overall system complexity, energy efficiency concerns, cost stationary ammonia crackers can cost around $100,000, and the sheer weight and volume of current commercial units make it impractical for light-duty vehicles right now.
How impractical?
The DOE said the performance would need to improve by at least 2 orders of magnitude, like a factor of 100, to be viable for onboard use. Because of this, they stated they weren't currently funding R&D specifically for onboard conventional ammonia cracking for vehicles.
But that doesn't rule out ammonia entirely.
Not at all. It's still very much being considered for hydrogen delivery, making hydrogen centrally, converting it to ammonia for easier transport, and then cracking it back to hydrogen at the refueling station. Or potentially using ammonia directly in applications less sensitive than PEM fuel cells, like maybe in shipping engines or industrial turbines.
Okay, so good for transport, challenging for inside the car itself. Got it. Now, this brings up a really important point. All this talk about making hydrogen, storing it, it doesn't mean much if you can't actually get the energy where it needs to go and use it effectively.
Absolutely.
And our sources highlight a very real, very current problem with this in Greece. What exactly is happening there with their renewable energy?
Yeah, Greece is facing a significant challenge with renewable energy curtailment right now.
Curtailment meaning wasted energy.
Essentially, yes. It's renewable energy, mostly solar and wind, that is generated. But the grid operator has to order the plants to shut down or reduce output because the grid can't handle it at that moment.
How bad is it?
It's becoming quite severe. In March of this year alone, they curtailed about 200 gigawatt hours. To put that in perspective, that single month accounted for a quarter of the total curtailment expected for the entire year of 2024.
Wow.
Over the last 12 months leading up to that report, they had lost around 900 gigawatt of clean energy this way. That's about 3.3% of their total renewable production energy just thrown away.
Why is this happening? Is it just too much sun and wind sometimes?
It's fundamentally a structural issue.
Yeah.
The grid infrastructure, the transmission lines, the interconnectors, they just haven't kept pace with the rapid build out of renewable energy capacity.
So the pipes are too small for the flow.
That's a good analogy. Especially during periods of high solar generation, like midday hours and potentially low demand, the grid gets congested, and there's nowhere for the excess power to go. The sources mentioned specific days, like March 2nd and 23rd, where curtailments were massive, over 17 GWh each day.
What's the impact of this beyond the wasted energy?
It directly hurts the economics of existing renewable energy projects. They don't get paid for curtailed energy. And maybe more importantly, it puts future investment in new clean capacity at risk. Who wants to build a solar farm if a chunk of its output might just get thrown away?
Right. It creates uncertainty. So the grid just can't keep up. What are they doing about it? And how does energy storage, maybe even hydrogen, fit into fixing this?
Well, the Greek government is aware of the problem. They introduced a draft bill specifically to regulate this energy spillage. The Energy Ministry has been meeting with grid operators, generators, and aggregators to figure out new operating procedures.
Especially with spring coming, more sun.
Exactly. More sun and wind, but sometimes lower demand, like around holidays. It's a critical time. The grid operator, IPTO, is working on strengthening the grid, building more interconnectors. But these are big, expensive projects that take years.
So no quick fix for the grid itself?
Not really. In the short term, they're looking at things like more flexible grid connection contracts, trying to encourage demand response, getting consumers to use more power when renewables are abundant, and smarter management systems.
But storage seems key.
Storage is definitely seen as a major part of the long-term solution. Greece's official energy plan, the NECP, aims for 4.3 gigawatts of energy storage capacity by 2030.
Is that enough?
The solar industry sector is arguing it's not nearly enough. They're pushing for that target to be increased to 8 gigawatts, warning that without it, the system could face operational collapse, and they want to keep that energy spillage below a 2% threshold.
So massive storage needed. Where does hydrogen fit into Greece's plans?
Greece did introduce its very first hydrogen law just last year. Law 5215-2025. It's a foundational step, regulating hydrogen production and introducing an interesting concept called Geographically Confined Hydrogen Networks, or GCHNs.
What are those?
Think of them as dedicated, localized hydrogen systems production, storage, pipelines, users operating perhaps for an industrial park or specific commercial area, independent of the main national gas or electricity grid.
Kind of like hydrogen microgrids.
Sort of, yeah. It's a start. But, and this is a crucial point from the source, this law only partially implements the relevant EU directives. Critically, it doesn't yet cover hydrogen-based solutions specifically for storing renewable energy to help the main electricity grid.
So it doesn't directly address the curtailment problem yet.
Not directly in terms of grid-scale storage solutions. There's still a need for more detailed secondary legislation to really define how hydrogen storage could be integrated into the broader energy system and create an environment that attracts investment for those kinds of projects. It's very much still a work in progress.
Okay, that Greek situation really brings the grid challenges into sharp focus. Now, what's fascinating here, we tend to think of clean energy, renewables, as this very modern 21st century thing. But our sources hint humans have been cleverly using renewable power for a very, very long time. What can we learn from how ancient people did it?
It's absolutely true. Harnessing natural energy flows is not new at all. Take solar energy. The sources mention Neolithic Chinese villagers way back around 4000 BCE.
Wow, that far back.
Yeah. They were already designing their homes with south-facing openings to capture winter sun for warmth, and using precisely calculated roof overhangs to provide shade during the hot summer months. It's passive solar design, thousands of years ago.
Amazing.
Chinese households also apparently use things like concave mirrors, probably polished bronze, to focus sunlight for lighting cooking fires.
Yeah.
And they developed sophisticated heating systems like the Kang.
What's the Kang?
It was a raised platform, often made of brick or clay, used for sleeping. Waste heat and smoke from the cooking stove would be channeled through flues inside the Kang, warming it up. It acted like a thermal battery, absorbing heat during the day and radiating it slowly through the night. Very clever use of waste heat.
Incredible ingenuity. What about other ancient cultures or energy sources?
Well, in ancient Egypt, wood was scarce, so they relied heavily on other biofuels like charcoal, dried animal dung, which is still used in many parts of the world, and agricultural waste like straw. For wind power, the sources mention early windmills in ancient Persia, structures called asbads.
What did they do?
They used the strong, consistent winds in that region to grind grain. And in ancient China, windmills were used for pumping water. Even the ancient Egyptians were masters of wind power for transport.
On the Nile.
Exactly. They used sails to travel south up the Nile against the current, pushed by the prevailing northerly winds. Then, to transport heavy goods like stone or gold back north, they could largely just float with the current. They understood and utilized the natural energy flows of wind and water incredibly well.
It's clear that observing nature and cleverly using resources isn't new at all. But then our sources make this stark contrast, highlighting just how incredibly inefficient our modern fossil fuel-based energy system is. Can you put that inefficiency into perspective?
It's quite shocking when you look at the numbers. One analysis, I think, from RMI stated that our current global energy system is only about 37% efficient overall.
Only 37%, meaning almost two-thirds is wasted.
Basically, yes.
Yes.
Think about it. In 2019, the world consumed about 606 exajoules. That's a colossal amount of primary energy. Of that, about a third, 196 EJ, was lost just on the supply side.
Supply side meaning?
Production, processing, transporting the fuels before they even get to the end user. And then another 30%, about 183 EJ, was lost on the demand side, actually converting that delivered energy into useful work, like moving a car or heating a room.
So huge losses at both ends. What are the biggest culprits for this waste?
The analysis points squarely at two main areas. Fossil fuel power plants generating electricity, which are often only 30-50% efficient, and internal combustion engines in vehicles, which are even less efficient, maybe 20-30% on average.
Wow.
Together, those two technologies account for almost half of all global energy waste. Even the energy used just to transport fossil fuels around the world by ship, pipeline, truck is significant. Apparently, something like 45% of all global shipping demand is just for moving fossil fuels. It's a system built on inherent inefficiency.
So what does this inefficiency mean for how things like hydrogen and renewables in general are set to disrupt the status quo?
It means they have a massive advantage baked in. Renewable electricity, producing energy closer to where it's used, localization, and switching to electric motors, electrification. These things directly attack the biggest sources of waste in the fossil fuel system. Electric motors are far more efficient than combustion engines, for example.
And other renewables play a role too, like hydropower.
Absolutely. Hydropower is a huge player already. It supplies about 15% of the world's electricity. That's more than all other renewables combined, and more than nuclear power.
And its advantages.
It's generally low carbon, doesn't produce direct waste or air pollution for the most part, and crucially, it's flexible. Hydropower dams can ramp generation up and down relatively quickly, which makes them excellent for balancing the grid and compensating for the variable output of wind and solar.
But hydro has downsides too, right?
Oh, definitely. Large hydro projects can cause significant ecosystem damage, flood large areas of land, displace communities, lead to silt buildup in reservoirs, and in some specific conditions, like tropical reservoirs, they can even release methane. And there's always the risk, however small, of catastrophic dam failure.
Yeah.
Like the Bankio Dam in China or Vagnant in Italy.
So a complex picture. Circling back to hydrogen specifically then, where does it fit best in disrupting that inefficient fossil system?
Given its characteristics, especially its high energy density by weight, hydrogen looks particularly promising for decarbonizing sectors that are hard to electrify directly with batteries. Think heavy-duty transport, long-haul trucks, buses, maybe even shipping and aviation eventually.
Because batteries would be too heavy for those.
Exactly. For heavy loads and long distances, the weight and charging time of batteries become major limitations. Hydrogen fuel cells offer zero tailpipe emissions, potentially high efficiency, quiet operation, and the possibility of fast refueling. The goal mentioned in the sources is really key. Get hydrogen refueling stations to provide hydrogen at a price equivalent to diesel and deliver it just as quickly. That's the benchmark for disrupting trucking.
A tall order, but you can see the potential. Okay, so today we've really gone deep into hydrogen. We've journeyed from, its basic molecular properties all the way to potentially storing it in massive salt caverns. We've compared ancient solar houses to the grid problems Greece is facing right now. We've seen how hydrogen is already crucial for industry, but also how complex and challenging it is to make it a widespread clean energy solution, especially around storage and cost.
I think if we connect this all together, the big picture shows that building a hydrogen economy, or even just significantly increasing hydrogen's role, isn't just about inventing better electrolyzers or storage tanks. Yeah. It's fundamentally about integration. How do these new technologies fit into our existing energy infrastructure? How do we overcome the economic hurdles? How do we get the regulations right? It demands a really holistic view, looking at the entire energy system.
It really does. So maybe a final thought for everyone listening. As you go about your day, think about this. If ancient people could figure out how to use the sun and wind so effectively with just careful observation and basic materials, what incredible new synergies might we unlock by combining hydrogen, solar, wind, smart grids, maybe even things we haven't thought of yet in completely new ways, especially when you consider just how much energy is currently being wasted in our existing system. What could that future actually look like in our homes, our cities, our transport? It's something to ponder.
Yeah.